us that the first aspect is awareness. And the other thing, especially in his book, Immune System of the Soul, he speaks quite a lot about beliefs, and he calls it viral beliefs. And his whole take, and we'll explore it specifically in the next 2 weeks a little bit more in detail, that all the diseases or most of the diseases of the soul comes from a viral belief. And a belief is something that I hold as true without evidence. And so it's something I hear, something I read, perhaps something that I become indoctrinated into, and then it becomes sort of my truth, but it's not based on something that I've experienced. It's something that I've internalized and believed to be true. Whereas with truth, and this is simplistic definitions, it's something that becomes mine as a result of an experience that I've had. So, for example, there's a swimming pool that's icy cold, and I've gone into it and I felt it, I've experienced it, and I know the cold it is. And so I come out of it, and let's say about 2 hours later, a friend of mine comes along and says, come on, let's go for a swim. The water is going to be so beautiful and warm. And because I've experienced the coldness of it, I know what it is. I won't easily just get into that water. But if I hadn't experienced it and my friend came along and said, oh, let's go, it's going to be warm, I'll be more likely to jump into that water and then have the experience and hopefully learn from that. So it's just important, I find, sometimes to check for myself, how do I live my life? What is the experiences that I hold that helps to inform the way I live my life? Or is it really just beliefs that I've created and have become part of how I live my life? And so let's just explore a little bit about what is your belief of how life is. And so in the slide in front of you, there's a few words. And so school, art studio, business, theater, stage, garden, playground, hospital, battlefield. I'm going to invite you to take a moment and just looking at these words, what is the most dominant way you look at life? Do you see life as a school? Do you see it as a garden, as a business where there's give and take and loss and profit? So just having a quick glance at it, and would be lovely if you'd like to unmute and share or put it in the chat. How do you see life? What's the filter through which you see life? So please do feel free to engage a little bit. I'll give you a minute or two. There might be one or two that comes. Let's see if you can find the one in which you tend to operate with as you move through life.
Me too, a bit here.
Okay, so Vasunda is saying school, learning every day. Debbie, theater, stage. Great. All right, so I'm sure you've had a chance to just check for yourself, and why I'm sharing this is because the way we look at life will determine how we respond and how we approach things. Rodi's saying it's like a playground. So if, for example, I take life as a school, then yes, I look at every opportunity, hopefully as a learning experience, as a growth, as a movement upwards. If I look at it as an art studio, then maybe it's an expression of my creativity. I find newness, I find joy, I find expression in everything. If it's a business, then maybe there's this whole thing of bartering, of give and take, nothing for nothing. I have to fight for mine. I have to make a profit no matter what cost. And so all of these different elements create certain coping mechanisms within ourselves. If I believe that life is a battlefield, for example, then I'm always fighting. I always feel I have to have my defenses up. I have to struggle through life. Nothing comes easy. And so it's just one of the things I find on the spiritual path, which is important and necessary to some extent, is to challenge my beliefs, because behind beliefs, or what fuels my attitudes and the way I respond to some extent is my belief. And some beliefs we've sort of internalized or made our norm, our reality from the time we were little, and perhaps what our parents said, what our teachers said, what our friends told us about ourselves, about life. Some of them we've created as we've gone through life, and we've become hopefully more mature, and so they've shifted as well. But still, it's important to see, am I still operating from belief, or do I operate from a deeper knowing of self? And, in Brahma Kumaris and Raja Yoga, the key aspect of self is really that I'm a spiritual being of light, of consciousness. So in a way, how much of the way I live my life is fueled by that awareness, not just as a concept, but as a knowing, because I experience it in my day-to-day life, and how much of it is just a concept that I hold on to, but I don't quite always have that capacity to act from what I know. And perhaps on some level, it's because that hasn't become my reality yet. And it doesn't happen overnight, but at least I begin the process. And so as we go through the next few weeks, we're going to be challenging certain beliefs that we hold. And I'm just going to try and change my slide. And these are very much connected to the dis-eases of the soul. And so Mike's approach is going to be, and we're going to adopt it over the next few weeks, is looking at physical ailments, but seeing what is the dis-ease of the soul, not quite related to that illness, but using that illness, a bodily illness, as an analogy and coming back to spiritual dis-ease. And through that process, let's begin to see what are the things that we've learned to create, and then we become trapped in that creation that we manifest as a belief, as a reality, and ultimately we suffer from it. And it's the suffering that's the dis-ease of the soul. Sorry, give me a moment. And then beginning to look how certain beliefs that we hold about ourselves, about others, about the drama of life, that each of these has its own symptoms, it has its own thought patterns, and its own type of emotional suffering. And so it's this process of being able to identify what are the symptoms, and then understanding what's the cause of it in terms of the belief that I'm holding on to. Because until I can identify it, I can't change or shift out of it. So identifying it, naming it sometimes is important. And then what's the method then to free myself? By bringing in some element of truth that can break that belief that I might be holding. And so through the next 2 weeks, like I said, what is it that we're going to explore is how do I become free from the dis-eases, and remembering that I've created it, and I've sustained it and I've been suffering from it. And that's a beautiful concept, because if I've created something, I also have the capacity to transform it, to change it. You know, Sister Aruna was reminding us that the word transformation has this understanding of transcending the form of it, so changing the form of it. And so the method would be to use the process of awareness, realization, and then transformation. And we've spoken about this quite a bit, so I'm not going to go more into that. And through it, let's begin to explore the causes and the symptoms. So think about it. When you have some physical ailment, for example, you become aware of the symptoms, and then you go to the doctor, and hopefully he can diagnose and he'll run tests to see what could be the problem. And it takes time for them to figure out sometimes what it is. And the method they sometimes use, Raksha's not here, she might have been able to explain this a little bit better, but from my limited understanding, the method they would use is through elimination. So, okay, we've done this test, it's come out clear, so you don't have this. We've done this, so it's not that. And then they explore all avenues to try and find what is the root cause of this discomfort or illness that you might be having in the body. And then they start to put you on a course of treatment that will then help support the process of healing and coming back to that state of well-being. And so similarly, within the concept or this process of understanding what's the dis-ease of consciousness, what's the dis-ease of the soul, we'll see what are the symptoms, and then there's be time for reflection. And self-reflection is an important process, because in terms of spirituality and identifying my dis-ease, I'm my best doctor. And so I have the greatest capacity and the tools to diagnose for myself what is the ailments within the self. And the beautiful process is that it is a very gentle process. It's not one that's harsh or critical, but it comes from a space of, I want to understand what are the things that trip me up. I want to understand what are the things that cause me a little bit of pain, a little bit of resentment or anger, or even just irritation sometimes. What is it that causes me to lose my peace? And so that would be the symptom. But the underlying cause would be that there's a certain belief that I'm holding. And as we dismantle that belief, then we begin to break the dependence that we have on others, and the strapping of that belief, because then we're tapping into the insights and wisdom that we hold within ourselves. Because like I said, we have the capacity to diagnose our own selves when it comes to the spiritual principles and awareness. If it's physical, yes, I do need a doctor. Google doesn't always help or give the best guidance. But within the self, it's silence, it's time for reflection, it's being honest with the self. These are the tools that we'll begin to adopt, so that I don't just deal with it in those moments, but it becomes tools that I take with me as something that I use throughout my life in helping me to support myself on these different levels. So I am going to stop now and just see if there's any question or comments, especially perhaps around this idea of beliefs. But if there's anything else that anyone else wants to share, please do feel free to unmute, or alternatively, just put it in the chat. You know, sometimes I feel when I'm faced with a situation, and usually the indication for me that I'm holding on to something tightly is that there'll be a feeling of resistance inside, a feeling of defensiveness, a feeling of wanting to justify or prove something. For me personally, those are the signs and indicators that I'm stuck, and a belief keeps me stuck and it keeps me trapped in something. And so I usually recognize that as some form of ego. And so in those moments, I just stop and just ask myself, is this really how things are? Is it true? And 9 out of 10 times, the answer is no. And when there's that ability to recognize what's the space I'm coming from, what's the limited perception, attitude, belief that I'm clinging to, and I'm able to release it when I see that, then I open myself to learning, to growth, to deeper understanding. And it's that one step of letting go, I feel, that begins to facilitate this process of not just transformation, but also healing. And so it's not big things, it's not major things, it's the little things that we confronted with in our life. And again, it's about how aware am I of what's the internal dynamics that are unfolding and either creating blocks. And when it's a block, then there is, like I said, resistance and dis-ease. I lose my happiness, I lose my peace. I start to think a lot about the situation or the person. These are all indicators that there's something that I'm holding on to. There's something that I'm clinging on to. And so freeing myself, becoming free from those trappings is about letting go of these viral beliefs that I might be holding onto. And so they might be many, but that's okay. It's just recognizing and then dropping them, or bringing in some aspect of truth so that that belief is dismantled. And you know, not to just take on board what others are telling me. Yes, I can listen, I can process things, but ultimately let me choose for myself if what someone's saying is true for me, because it might be true for them, but it might not be true for me. And so having that ability to discern and recognize what's useful, beneficial, supportive to me in this moment, whilst remaining aligned with my truth in terms of who I am as a spiritual being. So again, I'm going to stop there. I think I interjected when I had asked you to share. So please do feel free to unmute, ask a question, share a comment. Your experience or your thoughts around it also would be great.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
So,
good morning.
Yeah, I guess my situation is that my profession keeps me in the business world because I'm an accountant, and that's where the majority of what happens in my life that becomes the framework within which I operate. But yes, I want my life to be a garden, if you know what I mean. And I would like it to be a school, but my presence is held by my profession, right? So is it just a question of becoming more aware and I guess pollinating my mind with the fact that, no, I need to really be in the garden as much as I am in the business world?
I think you've answered your own question or reflection there, Sharad. It is that. And you know, it's yes, the business world works on this system of profit and loss bartering externally, but it's more about internally. Have I created this mindset and this attitude? You know, for example, it comes across in our relationships. I give fully, wholeheartedly, but I have an expectation that you need to reciprocate that. So that's sort of like a bartering, a business kind of attitude. And when that's not reciprocated, then I won't give because I believe I'm going to lose out. And so the belief behind it is this whole thing of only if I give, when I give, then I need to get back. Only then I'll be okay. I don't know if that makes sense. So yes, physically you might be in the business environment, and we all have our challenges based on our occupation, our responsibilities, but it's more internal process. Do I have this attitude of business, of barter, of profit and loss, of give and take? Because in spirituality, it's about abundance. I'm full, I'm complete, I have everything that I need. And because I'm taking from the source, I never lack anything. So that business kind of process or operational system doesn't factor in my internal process. I'm abundant, I just give. And because I have so much, I can give, I expect nothing in return. So it begins to, I begin to shift out of that conditioning and belief, and I move into a state of fullness, which then automatically dismantles that. And so, as you were saying, it is the awareness that I'm holding that will generate my outcome and my output. I hope that helps a little bit.
Yes, certainly it does. One of the reasons why I'm here as often as I can be. Thank you.
And you know, we're learning all the time, and I think that's the beauty of it. And when we engage in this kind of way, it also, you know, provides me with an opportunity to look at my own self. So I'm also grateful for everyone joining us and just sharing and also bringing things to the fore, because it is about growing together and learning together. So thank you for sharing that. Is there anyone else? Okay, so if there isn't anyone, let's go into a meditation now, and see what we can discover within ourselves. So sitting here comfortably, I take this chance to come back to that place of pure awareness. That within my journey, I've accumulated many, many things in the form of beliefs, coping mechanisms, certain thought patterns, attitudes. And these have all shaped the way I look at life, the way I respond to life. But most importantly, it has shaped how I see myself and relate to myself. Just for this moment, let me drop all of those beliefs and acquired aspects and only hold one awareness in my consciousness. I am light. I am peace. Allow everything else to fade into the background. So all that remains is I, the soul, this pure consciousness that holds abundance eternally and originally. The feeling of this abundance comes from the awareness of who I am and who I belong to. That in the fullness of my being, I need nothing. For I have access to the one that is the ocean, the one that holds everything. And so I am a tiny point of conscious energy. But at the same time, I am unlimited and abundant, like an ocean. And so I simultaneously feel and experience the power of the tiny soul. But at the same time, the abundance and fullness that I am. This awareness, this feeling, this experience creates a beautiful platform, a strong foundation with which I can navigate this journey. And so every time I bring myself to this awareness, I return to my truth. I'm clearly able to see some of the beliefs and limited thinking that I might be holding on to. And in the light of my truth, these cannot exist, that they automatically fall away. And it brings me to that place of power, of clarity, of wisdom. For this is who I am. And at every given moment, I have a choice. And so let me choose to come from that place of truth. Let me not entangle myself in the beliefs that I might be clinging onto. In the awareness of who I am and who I belong to, I have access to everything I need at every single moment of my life. So just for today, let me move through my day with this awareness and consciousness and constantly remind myself of the abundant nature that I am. So let me experience, experiment, and just enjoy the beauty of I, the soul. Om Shanti. So thank you all for joining us this morning, and a reminder that this evening we have our talk with Brother Shantanu, Mood Over Matter, and I think it will be a very insightful and also light-hearted talk. He's quite a light brother, and so he brings in some practical methods as well. So do join in if you can. And then on Saturday, we have the Emerging Shakti in honor of International Women's Day, which was on the 8th of March. just exploring the feminine energy of power. And so there's an amazing, amazing panel of speakers, both young and a little bit older. And so it will be a beautiful conversation of different generations and insights. So do join us on that, for that on Saturday as well. But until tomorrow, do take care, have a lovely day, and see you all tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock.